Good morning, Broncos country. We are live on Broncos for Breakfast, but we're going to bring in our Facebook groups real quick. So we're going to let it simmer, brew. I think, they say breathe at night. I think letting it brew just a little bit before we give it the old plunge makes a little more sense. And welcome in, everybody. This is Broncos for Breakfast. I will be your host today, Scott Kennedy, and this is my co-host over on this side, Erick Trickel. Nick is off in the woods somewhere on some lottery-winning backpack trip, so drowning his sorrows in some cold creek or something like that as the Broncos have fallen 2-4. Erick, how are you doing this morning? I know it is Broncos for like late dinner. I'm out too late and hitting the Waffle House at 5:30 in the morning in Alaska right now.
I'm doing good. I'm extremely tired. I'm partially convinced that Nick having me fill in these morning shows is just his attempt to get me to like coffee. I actually have coffee this morning. I normally can't stand coffee, but yeah, I mean, lucky for him, he watched the game, but lucky for him, he doesn't have to talk about this game for a little while at least because he's out enjoying a nice little hiking trip, and because this isn't a good game to be talking about.
Well, I because it was late last night. I think I got to bed at bed at 2 Eastern. I'm a little late getting started, so I'm plunging live with my Lion coffee from our friend Patrick over in Hawaii, who keeps us well caffeinated. So check them out, lioncoffee.com. This isn't an ad. This is just a kind of a thanks to someone who sent us some coffee. But this is the coconut roast. I was like, I've been saving it. I'm like, I'm not gonna like that. Oh boy, was I wrong. And not only that, it's like I pour the grounds in like all the different garbage cans, just like in case anything is a little funky. And the whole place smells like toasted coconut. Love it. It's great. On that note, there's some anger, and we're gonna get in here and say hello to the chat real quick, and then I'm gonna get your first reaction, and then I want to hit on some of the newcomers. There was a bunch of players, for the most part, making their debut with the team yesterday, and it wasn't all bad. I titled this "The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly." The result was ugly. The process looks bad, but I'm a personnel guy. I like to talk players, and I saw plenty of good to talk about from an individual standpoint that we can get into. But Gordon coming in here saying, I wonder if Peyton, good morning, Gordon on YouTube. I wonder if he'll reconstruct Wilson's contract. Nope, extension hadn't even kicked in. You're going to be stuck with that one for a while. Guys don't give back money unless they could lose money because they're about to get cut. And that won't happen until year 4 of this deal. So you are married to Russell Wilson through this year, and then 3 more, and then maybe I think it's like a 50 million, or it's like a 50 million. 30-something dead cap hit in year 5, but it's a 50 million cap hit. So you'd save 20 million, but it'd still be a $30 million dead cap hit, Erick.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was. I was looking at this morning. The first year they can get out of him, they save only 8 million between the dead cap from cutting him and actually having him on the roster.
But it's a monster cap number.
Yeah, you're probably looking at 2026 is the first year, because his 2025 salary guarantees on the 5th day of 2024 of that season. So that locks you in for another season. We're stuck with him. We're going to be stuck with him for a while. So you got to hope and pray that he turns it around, because his play the last couple weeks has been terrible.
And Corey says it starting to look better. And good morning, Corey. He says Wilson's starting to look more like the QB expected, at least. If we can play the Chargers this close at home, this close at their home with all the injuries, then we can expect a good couple of seasons. PS2 5th year plus tag. You get 6 years of control of PS2. That's a good thing. He is a young guy, so you're talking about him entering his physical prime when he's coming out. That said, there was a line I heard. I didn't particularly like this person, but he said a line that made a lot of sense that I've repeated on here before. The first time I heard it was, the busted play is no basis for an offense. The only time the Broncos are making passing plays, other than a quick hitter that they throw every once in a while, is an improvisation from Russell Wilson as pressure breaks down. It's a busted play. That's it. That's it, Erick. There's no 5-step drops. Set your foot, throw, and go. None. It's not happening. Just There's a multitude of reasons. You watch the all 22. Like I said, I'm a little bit more on the personnel side of things as far as my interest goes, where I like to put my time into watching the games. How much of it is on the offensive line? How much is it on Russell Wilson? How much of it is it on the scheming and getting the wide receivers open themselves, do you think? I know that's a big question. I'll try and keep it into a tweet.
Yeah, I mean, the passing offense, it's been luck and busted coverage. And a lot of it, and I know a lot of people want to point to the offensive line. The offensive line's not good. This isn't defending them by any means. But Russell Wilson has one of the highest rates of self-brought pressures and sacks in the NFL among starting quarterbacks. And we see it happen a lot. And we saw it happen a lot last night. Just after the snap, he gets back, he takes his one-step drop, and then he ducks like pressure's coming, and there's nobody near him. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it is self-brought pressure from him that fortunately leads to broken coverage that Denver can at least make something happen from him. But the offensive line, they're not doing their part well enough, consistently enough for them to not have their fair share of the blame.
Yeah, I think some of it's being I can't remember the word for it, but you're twitchy. You ever have older brothers or hang out with older kids and they hit on you all the time? Every time they'd like raise their hands, you're flinching. I didn't have any older brothers, but I hung out with all older kids when I was little. And every time you turn around, you're getting one on the shoulder or something. So you're flinching all the time. He's going back there expecting to get hit, not expecting. He doesn't trust his pressure, his protection at all. And speaking of protection, Broncos country, if you're like me, you're probably increasingly getting more concerned about cybercrime with people stealing your private data and invading your privacy. I'm not tech savvy at all. I'm a little tech savvy, but that's why I now use NordVPN on all of my browsers, whether it's my desktop, tablet, laptop, or phone. VPN stands for Virtual Private Network, and NordVPN protects you as a one-stop shop for all things cybersecurity. It's incredibly easy for me to use, which means I don't have to be an MIT grad to figure it out. With just one click, I'm protected. It's very intuitive. With my NordVPN account, I can have up to 6 devices. That covers most of mine, I think. Protected. I no longer have to worry about hackers and malicious sites, pop-ups. For the price of a single cup of coffee per month, I have complete peace of mind knowing that my devices and data are protected. Broncos country, grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/MHH to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan plus 4 months for free. That gets you to the Senior Bowl. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/MHH to get 4 months free. All right, Eric, speaking of protection, I wanted to get into some of the newer players that had come in. Billy Turner, he's such an albatross that they didn't even notice him in the first half because I was listening to the first quarter on the radio and he was in. But as soon as I got there in the second quarter, there's Billy Turner. Well, he comes out in the third and they're like, hey, here's Billy Turner taking his first snaps of the season. Like, no, he was in the second quarter. I guess that you didn't call his name was a good thing. But, what'd you think? Was it worth the wait? Do you see an upgrade? Do you see some help coming at the right tackle position?
Well, hopefully what we saw last night was just, issues of his first game back, coming back from that knee injury, because it wasn't pretty. Even when he got out there, I think on his first or second play out there, he got beat inside for a tackle for a loss or a very short gain. And he just got blown up, and it didn't get a whole lot better as the game went on. So hopefully we do get better from it. Hopefully all this hype that was around him when we signed him gets shown on there, even though I did feel when we signed him that it was a little bit of an overrated of a signing, even though it was 1 year, 2.5 or whatever million. Like he's fine as a starter. He's better inside than he is at tackle.
I've told Broncos country this story before, but I once said fine to a girl I was dating at the time, and it wasn't like, boy, you're fine. It was, how do I look? I'm like, you look fine. Oh man, was that brought off the psycho in her quickly. I should have known right then. I should have run. So when I hear fine, this is 30 years later and I'm still triggered. He was fine. That's not a compliment. But to be said, Eric, I liked what I saw from an athletic standpoint, I thought his kickback and his feet were really good. I really did. So as he gets up to speed, I think you're going to be in better shape. Just the speed of the game. It's been how long since he's taken live bullets? But from a length and his quickness and his athleticism, his feet drop backs, getting out and stopping the wide rush. I did like what I saw last night from Billy Turner.
Yeah, it wasn't like I said, it was fine. There were definitely a lot of issues with it. He shows, he's got the athleticism to run the scheme that they want, that they haven't been able to run. They can't do this outside zone with Cameron Fleming because Cameron Fleming doesn't have that mobility. He doesn't have the quick feet to get outside for it. They at least have that in Billy Turner. So I think that as he kind of gets readjusted to being in the starting lineup, that we'll see more of that. And I do think that a lot of his issues was the fact that it was his first game back, coming back from a knee injury. So, of course, it's going to be a little bit rusty. Same thing with Justin Simmons. He was rusty out there, but it should be a thing of it was just their first game back, getting the rust off.
And Ryan Slavic coming on YouTube was not very pleased with what he saw from the offensive line. Another terrible loss. Our O-line is trash. Russell's still not looking like himself. Play calling is terrible. Average running game. Defense looks, again, good, though, and I said this before, Eric, when you're looking at the schedule, there's no automatic wins, but there's no automatic losses. It's going to be an ugly season. I just did not expect. I don't think anybody expected the offense to be this inept. You couldn't have. There's no way. And I said that this season was going to be much more fun, just because it would be more wide open. On defense, I was right. So far on offense, it's been awful. It's been a trip to the dentist awful for a root canal. It's been horrible, painful to watch.
And I mean, we kept hearing throughout every single week, oh, they just need time to put it together. They need time to put it together. The issue is that they shouldn't be this bad. Even though there's a lot of moving parts to it, they shouldn't be this inept on offense. You do have a guy who is a veteran offensive coach in the NFL. Yes, he's taken on a new role as the head coach, but he shouldn't be this inept with the offense. You have a veteran quarterback who you're building the offense around. What they are doing is what he wants to do, and you're still this inept. It's part of it is it's what he can't do that he wants to do, but that's a whole other discussion. So yeah, it should take time to get everything together and put it and start seeing results. But it shouldn't look this inept. It shouldn't take this long to at least get some decent play for a little bit. And that's the issue. As for the defense, that's one of the few bright spots from last night's game. Playing a legit quarterback, they answered the call.
Yeah, especially 58, 59 throws. It was a record, and keeping them under like 250 yards, just phenomenal. I mean, sort of under 240. I mean, if you add 80 yards in pass interference, he's got bigger numbers. We can get into that as well. But I want to get to Naj first. Naj, hey, brothers, with so much optimism even after last week, now feels like all hope is gone. The team doesn't have the mindset to overcome adversity. Realistically, where do you see this team going next year? The mindset is starting to turn. It might not even be offense versus defense. It might just be everybody against administration. Melvin Gordon, I'm not sure how much longer you're going to want to keep him around if he's not going to be playing. Jeudy was looking for a sympathetic ear over on the sidelines. He went straight to Melvin Gordon. If Melvin Gordon's not going to be carrying the ball, he doesn't need to be on the active roster because he's not playing special teams. So, what do you end up doing there? Because there's going to be some chirping going on in that locker room. Where do you go next year? You've got the money to make one or two signings on the offensive line that would make a world of difference, Eric. One or two guys in the interior, a competent center, and a competent left guard, and we're talking a whole new ball game for me, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, you got to do something. You don't have the draft picks to go get a premium tackle. I'd like to see them add someone there, even if it's a developmental guy. And that's one issue that I've had with George Paton's drafting. We've been passing up on developmental tackle options, and a lot of them have come in earlier than expected and doing well. You got to fix that. You got to figure out a long-term solution at right tackle. Spending at guard, spending at left guard in particular, spending at center. Those are two things that are musts, in my opinion. Use what available funds you have. go do that. And as for the chirping on it, like, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I'm not saying that there's this locker room is completely turning in on itself, but you're starting to hear the fissures coming out. You're starting to hear them forming with what's being said. There's already been talk. I think it was Mike Kliss appeared on the Pro Football Focus podcast, and he was talking about how there are some in the locker room who don't particularly care for the special treatment Russ gets, which you can see a little bit on the sideline during games as well. Mm-hmm. And Melvin Gordon, I mean, everybody kind of told him to suck it up after he fumbled away the Raiders game. Well, Russell Wilson goes and gets babied, like, for lack of a better way to put it, after the Colts game with how bad he played. So you're starting to see the fissures. There's something there forming with Jeudy. And despite how bad this wide receiver depth is, it's getting to that point of maybe you do need to look into trying to move Jeudy, getting something in return for him before he's just completely, all values just completely shot.
Yeah, because you wouldn't pick up his fifth-year option by any stretch at this point going in. And so, yeah, what do you get? And could it be an addition by subtraction at a certain point? Seeing him out wide pains me. Seeing him in an X trying to go for contested balls, I'm like, that's just not his game, which, again, Eric begs the question, why was he drafted so high to begin with? He wasn't this athletic freak who, you go and look at RAS. When I see a thinner wide receiver, a slight build wide receiver, man, he better run like the wind, and change directions and catch everything near him, or, one of those elite things. He's okay. He's okay. He's not the number 2 guy off the board, middle of the first round type of take athletically. So, but you can get around that. OBJ was never off the charts like that, but he had body control like a ballerina. That was the first thing that came to mind. He can go up and catch anything that's near him. His catch radius was twice his length because he was just so good. Jeudy's not that guy. He's not catching the contested balls. He's good after the catch, but you've got to scheme him open. You've got to get him open, and that's not going to happen one-on-one fade routes out on the outside in contested balls. Gosh, love you, brother. Appreciate you coming in. Dave Glassman also coming in with some stars on Facebook. Thank you, Dave, for kicking us off. And Andrew Lampy is down here as well, who came in with some stars, some big stars this morning, buying the cup of coffee. Says, morning, guys. Thanks for being the only good thing about this team. Well, and defense, is it fire sale time? Andrew, that's a good question. The fire sale has a couple of different components. One, do you have movable assets? Two, do you have movable assets whose contracts you can move? Those are the big two. And the answer for the most part on those is no. Is no. I kind of make this joke almost once. Now that the season's going this, I feel like I make this joke about once a show. But we have folks coming in. He's terrible. He's overpaid. He's old, and he's always hurt. Trade him. You didn't do much of a sales job there, y'all. One of those 4 is enough to not get anything back. Now, are you willing to take a loss in order to trade? You have to give up something you don't want to give up. I mean, that's how it works. Like 2 first-round draft picks and 2 starters. That's how you make trades. Or you cut your losses and get something back. Jerry Jeudy is worth a middle round pick, might be worth more to somebody who's willing to take a shot on him. And he might be worth more to you not being on the team. If I'm not saying he is causing problems, but as they kept panning to Melvin Gordon and they panned to Jerry Jeudy, you knew exactly what they were saying, and it's not positive. So is it fire sale time? I don't know what you sell, Andrew. I don't.
And with Jeudy, I mean, he's one of the few assets I think that maybe you can look to sell. There's not many. I have a general rule of thumb.
You get something for Chubb.
Yeah. I have a general rule of thumb is that you typically want to try to find players that you're not going to bring back, that are on expiring deals or maybe 2 years left, that aren't super expensive, and basically on their rookie deal. Most veterans you're not going to look to move because they're too expensive. You can, but that's a whole other thing there. Jeudy and Chubb are what fits that category. Right. Jeudy, who has very openly over his first 2 years taken to Twitter to voice his frustrations, and then he backed that up. The most infamous one, was backing up his slamming of the coaching staff and the quarterbacks on Twitter with a game where he dropped 5 passes. Like, that's not a way to go out there and, you know, sell yourself, or even a way that the team can overcome it. And Bradley Chubb, he's this player that you want to keep because pass rushers are so valuable, but pass rushers are so valuable is why he has value on the trade market.
Right.
Those are the only two assets that are really movable.
And he's not a guy that's going to want to come back. You know, that's the point. So, you know, I've said since the trade, I thought the Seattle Seahawks got really good value for a want-away 33-year-old quarterback. Bradley Chubb at this point, you know, the way this is going, are any of your players, would they seek greener pastures? Yeah, they would. This isn't an environment. This isn't becoming an environment where they would want to stick around. But you don't trade, you know, if as long as they're good locker room presences, you've got some assets in your past 2 draft classes that you certainly don't want to give up. Baron Browning is playing like a star. He is playing like an absolute star, and it's not just going forward. He had a pass breakup, dropping into coverage. He had a play, it was gorgeous, where he tried to make an outside move or whatever, going for the pass rush, and he kind of got stoned. Like, okay, you know, and you've only got, if you don't win on your first attempts, you're probably not, you have to get your head up. Do I get my hands up? What's going on? Well, it turns out he then just goes ahead and picks up the running back. I mean, it may have been Eckler, who's leaking out into the backfield, and then makes a tackle instead of, like, you know, just keeping his head down and going for a quarterback. He it's just the awareness that I've seen from him off the ball. Oh, there it is, off ball, away from his pass rush, has been really, really good. Really, really good. He's been the Broncos, him and Surtain have been the Broncos' 2 best players the last couple of weeks, Eric.
Yeah, with one thing with Browning last year, when seeing him play as a linebacker, was you could tell there was a lot of thinking, that he just seemed to not necessarily get lost, but the processing time took a little while there, and that was an issue he had in college. Putting him at edge, you're really cutting back on how much processing he has to do. And it's really, you're reaping the benefits from it. I mean, his one play where he read the screen and made the tackle, which if he didn't make that tackle, that was probably a touchdown right there.
That's probably the one we're talking about. That wasn't an initial read. That was, I kind of didn't win my initial pass rush. How can I still make a positive play? Oh, that's maturity way beyond a second-year guy. You know, and Eric, I've always said, you know, you get these uber athletes who aren't necessarily great football players, man, put them in edge and turn them loose and just say, go get the quarterback. You got one job. Just go get this guy. Which Barron's athletic enough to do that, but now he's also showing more to his game. And God, it's fun to watch him play the game. I know, you know, the game, these are the kinds of things you look for. Trust me, I grew up in the 80s as an Atlanta Falcons fan. They had one winning season in the 80s, 1980. That was it. I was 7 years old. So 7 to 17, I didn't see a winning season. So you got to look for the little things as you are building your way back to where you want to be. Baron Browning is fun to watch week in and week out. I'm loving it. Wyatt Horning coming in with some stars. Appreciate you, Wyatt. He says, Wilson has been bad, but this showing is showing to be on Hackett more and more. His play calls are bad. Route trees are horrible. I think the run game would improve if we tried something other than an inside handoff out of shotgun. Lots of issues and seems no urgency to fix them. Part of it is this stubborn ego and belief that helps get to where you are, that what I am doing will work. I can't just turn around and bail on it. I have to stick to the process. And hey, if I don't, they'll pay me $40 million to leave. So it is, there's so much going wrong on offense right now, Wyatt. I'm with you on this.
Yeah, a lot of the issues with offense, and it's this issue I have. How much of it is on Wilson? How much of it is on Hackett? Because what they're doing offensively is what Wilson wants to do. He wants to be Peyton Manning.
That's on Hackett. Okay, I'm sorry.
It is.
I don't want to hear this stuff. That's on Hackett. At the end of the day, who's getting blamed for all this? Well, Wilson and Hackett. Wilson's got his $250 million contract. You're married to him for 3 years.
Yeah,
I'm not married to a coach. He doesn't hurt my salary cap. Hackett's ass is on the line. He could be gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't stand up for himself, then he isn't worth a damn.
And that's the thing is Hackett has to step up and say what you want to do is not working, and we're going to do things that I think we can do. They took this deep dive on the offensive side of the ball, and we just saw the same thing over and over again. The issues that
Definition of
do fall
insanity,
on
Eric.
the issues that do fall on Wilson is there are some good play calls in there. There are some good route combinations that are getting receivers open, and Wilson's locking onto one side of the field that shouldn't be his read, as he did in the final game against the Colts. Or he's just missing a wide open receiver or tight end right in front of him, like he did on Greg Dulcich. And
Oh
it's
man,
not a
Troy
situation
ripped him.
where he couldn't see him.
Eric,
Because
Troy
I saw
Aikman is usually pretty nice. Sorry to step on you like that.
Yeah.
Troy Aikman's usually pretty positive about everything, not real negative. And he's like, dude, he's right in front of you. I don't know what you're looking at here. Just give him the ball. Like, eesh, Troy, you're not wrong. I mean, they've got that spider cam right below the helmet of the receiver to see what he sees. And here's Greg Dulcich, right? At first down, he turns around, he falls forward. There's no one within him. First down. Oh, that one hurt, Eric.
Yeah, and you don't have the excuse because against the Colts in that final game with KJ Hamler, there's a lot of people saying, "Oh, he couldn't see him because Graham Glasgow and Cameron Fleming are so tall." You don't have that excuse on this Dulcich miss.
No.
On that one that you're talking about with Troy Aikman, and there was another one later in the game that same thing. It opened up right in the middle, and Dulcich is breaking free right there with room to pick up more. And Wilson just panics and ends up taking a sack, I think, on both of those plays. Like that is what's on Wilson. But Hackett does have to step up and say, we got to do what you can do, which is more play action rollouts, which is one reason why Wilson wanted out of Seattle. He doesn't want to do it, but it's this issue of, again, Hackett's the head coach. You got to step up and you got to be the head coach. Your quarterback can't decide.
Was this a Peyton Manning quote, Eric? You don't go broke taking a profit. Was that because the first time I heard it was Chad quoting? I mean, he may not have come up with it. The first time I heard that was Chad quoting Peyton Manning, and it makes so much sense. It's like I don't mind a greedy passer. If I break containment, that's when I want to be greedy. Man, I've got time. I've broken containment. Now I can start way down here and then work my way back to front. For my progressions and then eventually dump one out because I have more time generally. But man, when you're in the pocket, I get that. Maria Enriquez coming in here on Facebook, showing us some love. I want to say thank you and good morning. Hope you are doing well. Bama X, good morning, Bama X. Says our center is damn near the worst. Guards are and meh. Tackles are serviceable. I thought it was a decent back outing. The right side of the line I thought was better with Miners and Turner there from what I saw. I did think there was hope there. Eric, I did a show yesterday where I highlighted a Falcons play. It was second play of the game where I've had concerns about Drew Dahlman as far as being the weak link on that line. And he's just getting, he gets pushed back when there's somebody head up on him. He's getting pushed back 3 yards. So the line of scrimmage is getting set 3 yards behind him on a run and play or a sure pass play, just like that, right off the snap. It's every single play with the left side of your line. It's Reisner. It's Cushenberry. It was Glasgow. If he wasn't necessarily getting pushed back, he just wasn't making contact because he wasn't very mobile. But it's every single time that it's a third and long. There is no pocket, Eric. There is no pocket being set for the most part.
And when it is, you have all these other issues with it. But I mean, Cameron Fleming, for what he is, he's all right. And what he is he's a guy who should be your fourth string offensive tackle. He's thrust into the starting job because Calvin Anderson, there's a reason Calvin Anderson got benched early in that game. He only played like 10
Nick
snaps.
Had been calling all week. Nick called that all week. He goes, "This is what's going to happen." Mm-hmm. He did.
Yeah, it was expected that Cameron Fleming was going to get the start there because from what I've heard is Calvin Anderson has been absolutely terrible in practice. He had a terrible preseason. He was terrible in training camp, and practices haven't gotten any better. Instead, they ended up going, from what I understand, there was a slight little twinge with Billy Turner's knees, so they decided to hold him back unless they absolutely necessary. And Anderson was bad enough to where it was absolutely necessary. But Fleming did all right. Turner was rusty. Miners was good. But Cushenberry and Reisner continue to be extremely problematic. And for weeks, I talked about how Graham Glasgow wasn't the weakest link on the interior. That's not saying that Glasgow was good. There's no arguing that he was good. He was the best offensive lineman in not the last game, but the 2 games prior. But Cushenberry and Reisner are just that much worse. It's almost every single play you're either seeing Reisner blocking with his shoulders because he doesn't get his hands up or on the ground, and Cushenberry almost every single play is getting pushed back into the lap of the quarterback on a passing play or being pushed around and eventually shed for a tackle for a loss or a short gain. Like, it's just consistently issues there, and Denver doesn't want to do anything to fix it.
Yeah, I don't care if you're not comfortable with a 6'6" center. How comfortable you are with a 6'3" center that's in your lap.
When you're not even hitting the middle of the field anyways.
Yeah.
Like, that's supposedly the reason, and you're not doing it. So,
Snarky User coming in green. Appreciate you, Snarky User. You know, that should have been my name. Snark. I'm so full of snark. I've heard both ways that snark is a sign of intelligence and a lack of intelligence. I prefer to go with the former myself. At this point, can we trust Paton and company to make a dumpster fire sale decisions? I still feel that the moves that George Paton has made personnel-wise have been, for the most part, net positive. I do. I mean, I'm not going to just go ahead and I'm not going to regrade. You can regrade with hindsight. I'm not going to change what I said at the time. Was I skeptical of getting a Uber quarterback's offensive coordinator who's not even calling plays? Yes. As your head coach? Yes. I was skeptical about that. And the reason why, as you know, Broncos country, is because Josh McDaniels and Charlie Weiss were utter flops. Horrible, embarrassing, dumpster fire flops once they didn't have Tom Brady. I learned, be careful on that. The offensive line, I've been critical of not addressing the right tackle when you've had the means to do so for 2 years. But overall, I think George Paton has done a really good job in constructing this roster. Personnel-wise, right now, the Nathaniel Hackett hire looks like it could be the torpedo that sinks your beautiful boat. You did a beautiful boat. It looks great, but there's a giant hole in the bottom of it, y'all. So do I think Snarky User, he could get good value if he decided that, hey, we're going to start moving some guys? I do think so. Relatively speaking.
Paton has absolutely killed it with the draft. I still disagree with the process that led to drafting Patrick Surtain, but the results have been extremely good. Like, there's no denying that. He's done a good job there. Free agency and other decisions outside of the draft continues to be questionable from Paton. And it's an issue of, they had a chance to improve the right tackle position with multiple players, and they decided to go cheap, getting 2 players that they knew had injuries. They knew Tom Compton was dealing with a back injury. They just didn't think it would be that severe. Same with Billy Turner and his knee, and then Calvin Anderson, betting on Calvin Anderson taking this tremendous step forward. So these issues with Paton are in free agency, and maybe something should be done there. That said, I haven't lost complete faith in him as a GM because of how well he's done drafting. And one coaching decision, which seems to be falling flat on its face, also doesn't ruin it for me. My issue with what he did with the coaching staff was completely letting Nathaniel Hackett go out and hire his friends to be the other coaches. That's right. That's where my issues with that lie.
I expected a Dom Capers on the staff, and not like on the field, as your defensive coordinator. I'll mention the Falcons again. Apologies. But Arthur Smith, first-year head coach, comes in, and his defensive coordinator ends up being a legendary Dean Peace. Get an old head in there. Do it. You needed a little bit of back and forth. Defense looks great. No problems there. They had a more history of playing well. You're trying to bring up 6 years of bad on offense, but the offensive line has regressed so badly. I like this comment from Lawrence Rivera. Gordon is going to want out, but who wants him? it doesn't matter. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Addition by subtraction at some point. If he wants out, turn him loose. If he walks into George Paton's office and says, "Hey, I want out," say, "Okay, here's your papers. Thank you. Goodbye." You cut him. This one's not hard. You cut Melvin Gordon. That one's not hard. And what can you get for him? A seventh, maybe. Get on the phone. Hey, you want a seventh rounder? We'll kick in some money. We'll pay you for us to take Melvin Gordon. Send us a sixth. He doesn't have any value. He's on the last year of his deal, and he's a 30-something-year-old running back with fumbling issues right now. That's what you're trying to sell. So that doesn't matter who wants him.
And on top of that is, I think that the Gordon's, being problematic is a little overblown, but he's not shy of saying how he feels,
right,
or making it clear how he feels. That's going to ruin what value there is anyway. So it isn't one of those issues where it is possibly, you let him go and it's an addition by subtraction. There's nobody that's going to trade for him. Maybe a team that just suffered an injury at running back position that is a contender, that has this other talent, the supreme quarterback, to overcome a potential fumble. Maybe they might be interested for, having Denver buy a pick with him. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, you just got to cut him.
6th or 7th. But yeah, if you don't want him anymore, who we do love, we love the Boogmeister coming in green. He says, was it just me, or did it look like Dalton Risner was having hearing problems half the time? He looked lost and didn't know what the play was. I think that's part of the protection, but it's also, Boogmeister, one of the reasons why we were always so critical the first couple games of the season about the play clock getting wound down. You're at 3 seconds left and your interior line is doing this. And for those of you on radio listening after the fact on a pod, I'm looking very frantically over my shoulder because I see Dalton Risner in a 2-point stance, standing straight up, looking back over his shoulder. What's the count? What's the call? What's the protection? I don't know what's going on. That can get fixed if you're efficient with your play calling and getting in. But yeah, and you've got 20 seconds left on the clock, you're okay. But when you're winding that down, it becomes very, very problematic. And it was an issue we saw earlier, Boog. And I've been critical of Dalton Risner since I started working with Mile High Huddle 2 years ago. Like, this guy shouldn't get a free pass. He's not very good.
Yeah, and a lot of the hope was that Denver returning to an outside zone scheme, which he was in his rookie year, where he had a fine rookie season, would be this boost for him. But I think he's beyond destroyed at this point. Going back to what I said about Hackett hiring his friends, Butch Berry is the one that comes to mind the most, because you got rid of Mike Munchak, because Mike Munchak doesn't like to coach outside zone schemes, but he's more than willing to do it because he went and helped install it in Minnesota. But you just got rid of him because you didn't want a potential problem on your offense with a veteran coach, and you have Butch Berry there. Like, it's a bunch of issues with it.
That screams insecurity to me.
Yeah. And Dalton Risner, some of his issues are because of Lloyd Cushenberry. They do a lot to help cover him. One of the sacks that Russell Wilson took was because of how they set the blocking on the play, because of they had to cover up for Lloyd Cushenberry's weakness. But Dalton Risner's issues go far beyond that. His lack of usage is 100% on, or usage of his hands is 100% on him. His inability to stay on his feet is on him. And it's not a situation where he's engaged with somebody else and another defender comes and pushes him down. No, the defender he's engaged with is just throwing him to the ground.
Yeah, I remember seeing that one where I thought he was going to get called. It was on a pass. Was it to 87 with Tomlinson? A nice back hip. I thought they were going to call him for tripping because he got run over so bad. And he reaches up and tries to grab his ankles going by. That Risner has been a problem. Who's not a problem? Phyllis, it feels like a new name coming in. So we appreciate you coming in and showing some stars. So thank you very much, Phyllis, for the support. Coming in. I had something I wanted to hit on real quick when we were talking about Cushenberry, Risner. I feel like I've jumped on them way too much. How about Greg Dulcich? He's bigger than I was expecting. I thought he was listed at 6'3", 240 or something. He looks bigger than that when he's out there. But getting 2 nice completions. We talked about, can he make an impact? And I said, yes, Teach him the route tree. I don't need him to be an all-in-one tight end yet, but he can be a big weapon to help. He didn't get targeted again after the first quarter until the last drive in the fourth quarter. Eric, explain that one to me like I'm a 6-year-old.
Well, I mean, one of the plays, again, Wilson had him open and he saw him. You can see Wilson look at him and he just looks off of him. And that came in, I think, overtime. It was a chance for a first down late in the game. Might have been the fourth quarter. Dulcich looked extremely good. He was one of the promising guys. I think a couple of the rookies looked extremely promising. He was one of them. His blocking was an issue, which there's no surprise there. And if you watched him in college, you knew that blocking was going to be a bit of an issue. But it's not as bad as Albert Okwuegbunam, and he's at least showing his ability on offense to be a weapon. Mm-hmm. At least he showed it, which we haven't really seen from Albert Okwuegbunam. So, I mean, that right there, that's why you have Albert Okwuegbunam inactive. Dulcich is promising. He definitely looked like he spent some time in the weight room as well, because he definitely looked a little bit bulkier than he did, even from the rookie mini camps and everything. When we saw him dressed up and everything, he looked a little bit bigger.
Real point that I remember the point I was going to make, and then I'll move on, is I get from bashing the offensive line, at least for a little while. The scheme dependent guys, I'm not interested. You know, it's like, oh, well, he's better in this scheme. Okay, better in this scheme. He better be good in all schemes. Yeah. If you're scheme dependent, you're not good enough. I don't care. You know, we've talked about that a little bit. Nick and I went on that with Pat Surtain. Well, I don't know that he fits in the scheme. Schemes change year to year, week to week at a certain point. And if I've got a guy that is scheme dependent, then he's not good enough. I need athletes. It's a bigger, faster, stronger game. Now, will guys be better in different schemes? Of course. Don't get me wrong on that. But I don't need a guy. If a guy is completely irrelevant in this scheme, he's not good enough.
Yeah. So, with that, when I scout for the draft and everything, if ever the term comes up like scheme limited or scheme diverse, they'll get a bump for being scheme diverse, whereas they'll take a little hit for being scheme limited, because things always change. I mean, everybody was expecting Denver to run a lot of zone coverage. They're predominantly man the last 2 years. And that is one thing, is like, we haven't really seen Surtain fully in a zone scheme, but so we can't say for sure how diverse he is. But when we have seen it, it's been promising. Yeah, and
he should be okay. I mean, zone. Yeah. You go to zone to make up for lack of 1v1 ability. Mm-hmm. You know, if I've got a guy that stands out in man, he'll be okay in zone, especially at corner where I've got a limited area to cover, as opposed to, in the slots where it's coming at you from 10 different directions. You know, I've got the sideline as my best friend in a zone as a corner.
And I think it was Cody Alexander last year who he had a great article. Dude's absolutely brilliant. He was talking about Denver with their coverages, and especially with how it pertains to Patrick Surtain. And it was, they're putting him in a single man matchup, whereas the rest of their defense was running zone because he could be trusted in that. And that is something that with other corners Vic Fangio had, you couldn't really trust them in those 1v1. So you saw a lot more zone from them. So you shouldn't have to worry about that with Surtain.
We saw Ronald Darby as a pretty good football player.
Yeah.
We saw that too. You know, we talked about, was he maybe a little bit overpriced and he could be susceptible to, a salary cap move next year. He's a pretty good football player. Pretty good friend of the show is Naj Althoff, coming in orange again. I've always been a big fan of Wilson going back to Wisconsin, NC State. He's not only earning his salary, getting perceived preferential treatment will cause division. Now with another injury, is it best to sit him down into the bye? Depends on how injured he really is, and the preferential treatment is okay if you're earning it. He doesn't have that capital built in with the Denver Broncos. He has a name, but then he's just another one of the guys when he came into the Denver Broncos. You're coming into my team. I'm Justin Simmons. I'm Bradley Chubb. This is my team. You don't come in here and then you start acting like you own the place unless you own the place. You come in here and throw 400 touchdowns and 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. we'll look away. I always just think of I reference this line all the time from Bull Durham. You got fungus on your shower shoes. If you win 20 in the show, the press will call you colorful. Until you win 20 in the show, it means you're a slob. So he comes in and puts up 15 wins and, does all of these things. The press will call you colorful. Until then, you're a diva. And it's not, I can see where could start causing problems, Naj. I'm with you on this one. Appreciate the super, the big super and all the support as always.
Yeah. And we know that Wilson had some of these issues of rubbing teammates the wrong way because it was an issue in Seattle and they were a lot more vocal about it, especially there at the end, because it had just worn completely through the patience with him. He gets his preferential treatment without fully earning it. He thinks that this is coming out of Seattle and everything, that their success they had was because of the run game and the defense, whereas he did just enough that he wasn't this elite quarterback, but he got treatment like he was one of these elite quarterbacks. And right. We're sitting here in Denver. Somebody had this comment here in the chat is all the excuses or not excuses. Everything we're saying about Denver now, the bad offensive line play, the receivers not getting open, the play calling, that was said in Seattle for years. Same issues. So it's at some point you got to look at the quarterback and be like, that's partially you. And here he is getting this preferential treatment, got this huge contract without ever playing a snap, has his own team sitting there being part of this whole process, has an office inside the building. And there's other players who have been in Denver, putting the work in Denver, have earned a little bit of that right to have some special treatment. And they can't have their own guy be around them even for a little bit because they're not Russell Wilson. And that's where some of this issue and divide in the locker room is starting to form.
Yeah, and I agree. And it's not necessarily, there's a comment in here. He's not a bad guy. I think it's from Little R Rand Man. He's not necessarily a bad guy or a bad quarterback. No, none of that. But when things start going badly is when you start seeing the division and the little things. It's like, what are you really mad about? I'm not mad that you didn't pass it to me. I'm mad about this. Those are the kind of things that start to stack up when things start going badly. And Lawrence Rivera coming in with some big time stars. Appreciate you, Lawrence. He said, I wouldn't trust Peyton to rebuild us with a 20-foot pole. I'm still willing to give Peyton the benefit of the doubt. I'm interested to see if it continues along this line. 2-4, 6 games, multiply that by 3. We're talking 6-11. Hackett's gone. He's got to be. So you get one more shot at it. You get one more shot at this. We didn't put $250 million into this. We didn't just spend $5 billion. We're not doing all these things to be 6-11, not with the expectations that were coming in to regress from Vic Fangio. I'd give him another year. I'd let him get one more head coaching hire. But if it continues on this line where 2-4 becomes 6-11, it's a one and done, one more chance. And as Cristiano says, appreciate you, Lawrence. As Cristiano says, hey, this is easy, y'all. Down in Brazil, appreciate you, Cristiano. Easy fix for the 2023 offseason. Just fire Hackett, Alton, Barry, and Kubiak. Bring in competent offensive staff. Elevate Evero to head coach. Focus on the draft and free agency and plugging 3 holes, left guard, center, and right tackle. Viola, playoffs. Sounds easy to me, man. Sounds easy to me. We should all try it. No, the big problems are fairly easy to spot. Fixing them is not so easy. You think you've got it fixed. Okay, we've got a curmudgeon-y, I don't like football players or anybody head coach. We'll bring in a very team-friendly, and it was an overcorrection. It's not always that easy. This isn't Madden. These are human beings we're dealing with, and they're volatile. Not just Viola, but volatile.
Yeah. Talking about Peyton, this leads me to an opinion that I have, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. If things don't get better with this offense and George Paton decides and Hackett doesn't get fired, do you have George Paton tied with Nathaniel Hackett for next season? As in, Hackett gets another year. If things still don't work out, does George Paton then go to?
The second year, yeah. If you miss it twice, because that would be if it's this and you bring him back, then you're hitching your wagon to Nathaniel Hackett. Okay, you've got a chance. Kind of like Shermer. You want to get rid of Shermer? No, you don't. Okay, well, your two fates tied together. So, and if you finish again, Hackett comes back if you win 6 out of your last 8 games. Even if you finish 8-9 and you win 6 out of, you will lose a couple here. You see rock bottom. It looks like 2-6, but then you turn around, you go 6-2 to finish it. And my math's still off. I'm missing a game in there. 17 games is just killing me, Eric. Then maybe 8-9 you might survive it. But right now we're on that one and done with this new environment in Denver Broncos. We're on that path. Stash coming in on Twitch. Appreciate you, Stash Branding. He says, I don't agree with Hackett's calls being bad. They were the first few weeks. The last few weeks, well-balanced, open wide receivers. This is on Diva Russ and the offensive line. There's plenty of blame to go around, Stash. I agree. And not being in the headset, I think I'm almost willing to give, because Hackett's so freaking likable, I kind of want to give him the benefit of the doubt. But if it comes down to, well, you're being overridden by your quarterback, then that's a problem. I'm trying to do the things to appease my quarterback. You're the charge. You're the head man in charge. And if you don't have the stones to be the guy in charge, you're in the wrong position. And I get it. I never wanted to be the number one. I always liked being the guy behind the guy. I didn't even see my name in lights. I get it. That's part of it. But you try and empower other people, and I'll be rewarded for it as it goes. I understand that. But when you're the head coach, there's been enough rumblings around here of trying to appease and do this the way your quarterback wants. It can be a problem. That isn't just, well, this is on Russ and the offensive line. First rule of management, Eric, whose fault is it? Managers.
Yeah. And as you said, Hackett is a likable guy. I want to see him turn around because he is one of those people that he's just got this infectious personality that you kind of want to root for. But the issue is that's why he got hired. They didn't want to go with Dan Quinn. They decided to go with Hackett as the Jaguars are pressing in on him because he was this likable guy. He would bring fun and energy back to this team after Vic Fangio drained it. That Dan to me
Quinn,
isn't...
Eric, to be fair, Dan Quinn is essentially that guy. He is a player coach to a fault. He is players love him, but he's defense.
Yeah. And Hackett was this guy that was very fun. Jaguars started coming in, and Dan Quinn is this defensive guy where the focus was on getting an offensive guy. His players like him, and some players, there have been some players that have come out and spoke about how he's a little rougher on the edges, about how he's a little bit more, he's not as loose as Hackett is, I guess I would say. Not as hard as Fangio, not as loose as Hackett, and they wanted the complete opposite of Fangio, which led to Hackett getting hired with the Jaguars coming in, breathing down their neck. And it's one of those things of like, I get it, and you just shouldn't be hiring a head coach mainly for that reason. And that is, it's problematic, and we're seeing the issues here because he wants to be that likable guy. He doesn't want to tell the quarterback who has all the money we got to do it my way. He doesn't have the cojones to sit there and run the team as he should be because of this issue.
And as a first-year head coach, he's not, like I said, some of this smacks of insecurity. I'm hiring a coach for the coaches. Some of it's, I don't want the veteran around. I'm going with all new guys. Some of that smacks of insecurity. Bryce coming in, where all of the pass interference, all 4 of them, on Mathis, the right call. Looks like many of those were uncatchable. No, they weren't all the right call. There was one in particular. It was great coverage that was in the first half. The one they gave to Kareem Jackson at first. Kareem Jackson just shaking his head. Well, Mathis should have been shaking his head too. That wasn't pass interference. To be fair, the deep shot up the right sidelines to the end zone was borderline. That one could have gone either way on the first drive where the Chargers ended up posting. We want to talk about Mike Williams shut down, Pat Surtain, this, and this. Was he, though? Or was I just getting 300 yards just targeting Mathis?
Yeah.
So, I'm willing to hedge on that one just a little bit. No, all those weren't on him. And he'll get better. I saw some good things in there. It won't. But the problem is I swear to you, Eric, when you start getting that label, you get a PI every freaking game.
Mm-hmm.
Do not get the benefit of the doubt. And hopefully he can go some games without that, because you get seen and you get that label and the rest will be like, oh, it's him. It's 2-7. It's got to be PI. And they just start throwing the flags. I swear they do. Gary Lees Palmer throwing some super chat. He's been struggling on Facebook a little bit, so he made the hard journey over to YouTube and is taking care of us on that side of things too. Tim Hoffman coming in. Appreciate you, Tim. I still enjoy not seeing all the intercepted throws from the quarterbacks this season. This season is just training. It's over. Let the team build chemistry, work on play calling, going deep in the book. Offensive play calling needs to get way better. That was a joke the second half. But again, Rustin doesn't throw so many damn interceptions. Not throwing very many catchable balls, period, is the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's problematic when you're pretty good frequency overthrowing Cortland Sutton, who's got a pretty good catch radius. But I am with you with that. I would rather see this slop than the interceptions, simply because, turnovers aren't good. Like, it just puts, when you're turning the ball over consistently, that's just adding to the reason why you're going to end up with a fracture between your offense and your defensive side of the ball. At least this way, you're not forcing your defense to be on the field more frequently because you're turning the ball over. So it's a little bit easier to swallow. And going back on Mathis real quick, when you mentioned about getting that label of the guy, you don't get the benefit of the doubt. Mm-hmm. So those calls, like the one that I think was just great coverage, like, you're going to get that call. The ones where you could go either way, which I agree with you, that one call that he got, they called it. I'm not upset they called it. If they didn't call it, I wouldn't be upset that they didn't call it. But he doesn't get those anymore. Those are all going to be flags. So you got a couple more games before that label, really sticks, and it's on Mathis to get that around. He did show plenty of flashes. That, I think it was that 4th down pass breakup he had, was just a tremendous play by him.
And that one we referenced, the one they called on Kareem, that was a 3rd down play. It was a phenomenal play. We saw plenty there. Speaking of new guys, Allie's coming in on Facebook, and Allie is pissed. Again, 0 offense, clueless coach, and Wilson is a bust. Another wasted season and millions of dollars. Well, it's tough. I'm not gonna even try and talk you down from this one. Go ahead and vent. Let it out. That's what we're here for, Allie. Appreciate you being here on Facebook and joining us. We will talk about some things to look forward to. We have some of the young players, Baron Browning, Pat Surtain, some of the building blocks coming in. But yeah, I'm not going to try and this is Monday, the morning after. Let it out. That's what we're here for.
And another positive, talking about young players, I thought Matt Henningsen looked really good. He's been playing sparingly over the first few weeks, and I thought that when he was out there on the field, he played well. But we finally got to see those splash plays from him. He got that sack, which I haven't seen the sack. I missed it when watching it live. I liked what I saw. Was it?
It was but he was laughing about it. He was like,
But at least we saw the splash plays from him. I'm excited for him. I like the draft pick. He was one of the guys that, when we got the combine list, he was one that I was like, his name not being on this list makes 0 sense. I think he ended up with a 3rd round grade for me, and we got him in the 6th round. And I don't get why he was viewed so low in the NFL, because he showed these plays. He's a hustle guy, and I guess that explains it. Hustle guys don't get as much love as athletes, but he's not a bad athlete.
Hustle guys that we won't get into right now.
But I like what he's doing.
That's code for what? Anyway, sorry, Eric. Not the ATF coming in $5 green. Appreciate you, not the ATF. He says Packers are looking for a wide receiver. Get Jerry out. Sadly, they probably want a wide receiver that doesn't drop passes. Dang, he's not dropping a ton. You know what what he could use, and I've said this before, is because he's still super young. I mean, he's still younger than Calvin Ridley was as a rookie with the Atlanta Falcons. He's young. And some of these guys come in a little bit more mature than others for one reason or another. And some of them never grow up. Some of them are still 30-year-old man children. But Aaron Rodgers would take him by the scruff of the neck and be in charge. There's no question who is in charge on that field. That is his. I mentioned it's like Russ comes in with kind of that attitude a little bit. You know, we're going to do it this way, blah, blah, blah. And he hasn't earned that with the Denver Broncos yet. Aaron Rodgers has, with the Packers. You know, this is my team. This is where we're going to do it, or I'm going to toss your ass into the we're going to do a Lambeau leap that you ain't coming back from. and Jeudy could use some of that. You know, I think he could. So that might not be a bad fit if you're looking for maybe come in with a third rounder or so, and you get a team that goes like that. I think Jerry still has a future in this league for sure. It just might not be in Denver, Eric.
I can't remember who it was, but I remember pre-draft somebody was talking about it. Might have been Mel Kiper. They were talking about Jerry Jeudy, and they were talking about things that they were hearing about him, that he's kind of has this ego to him, and that he kind of just he's going to have a little bit of a rude awakening to the NFL, but he needs it. And what you're saying just reminds me of that. And he hasn't had that in Denver. Teddy Bridgewater, Drew Lock, all these quarterbacks that we've had, they haven't had, the NFL play that can really do that. And Russell Wilson hasn't earned it yet. But yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, there's no question about it. Aaron Rodgers can go in there, grab him by the scruff of the neck, knock him down a peg, essentially, and get him going and potentially improve. And that is what Jeudy needs. He doesn't even have it from the coaching staff either, which is a little interesting with Zach Azzani. I think Zach Azzani is a really good receivers coach. And the fact that we haven't been able to get Jeudy to be, this consistent player, granted injuries, and have him knock down a peg, same with Cortland Sutton being in there, is a little interesting, but that is what Jeudy does need.
Yeah, most of the guys, they don't mind leadership. They'll take to it. And if you're a little bit immature and there's a void in leadership, you'll see acting out. I mean, it's crazy to say this, but it's not that much different than kids and dogs, honestly. It's basic behavior. You ever, your kids who, are used to you and they know you're not going to bust their butts too much. I try to put the fear in them early so they'll listen. And then you go and you watch these kids who are running around like crazy around your house. You go to school and the teachers have them lined up like little ducklings. They don't mind the process. They don't mind I think Jerry Jeudy would be like, all right, I know my place. I appreciate the direction. Let's get this. Cristiano's coming in from Brazil with the Real coming in, and he's getting it. He says, immediacy and anger aside, still see good roster foundation to feel good about the next couple of years. The season is done, though. Appreciate all the work, guys. Yeah, I agree with this. Again, I said it earlier. I'll repeat it before we get out of here because we're getting close. We just knocked over an hour mark. Two interior linemen changes this team dramatically. Two competent interior linemen, and this is an entirely different team. And that's not that hard to come by. Those guys are cheap and they're available in the middle rounds. A third round pick, I can find a starter at center. I can find a starter at guard in the third round. I've got plenty of salary cap room to find 2 starters on the free agent market. I can do it. And there's a lot of good young pieces on this team. And better offensive line play will get better quarterback play. The scary thing for me is Hackett competent at all? Will he be? Does he grow into a competent head coach or not? And if he doesn't, then the rest of it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's the issue is you can look at the offensive line. There's 2 clear holes. Not saying the rest of the unit's doing good, but you can look at it almost every single play and point to the issue either being Lloyd Cushenberry or Dalton Reisner. They drafted Luke Wattenberg, who, hey, at least it's a shot at improving it. It sent a message that Lloyd Cushenberry has to step up. My fear is that they're going to bet on this 5th round pick or 6th round pick, whatever he was, to come in and replace Lloyd Cushenberry if he fails. I think they need to start that process now. And honestly, Graham Glasgow should get first shot because I don't trust Luke Wattenberg just yet. And that's not because I trust Graham Glasgow. I just think Graham Glasgow is slightly better as Lloyd Cushenberry, or would be slightly better as a center, you got to go out there and spend, because you're not going to be able to rely on a premium pick because you don't have it. You can find both a center and guard later in the draft, which, hey, that's an area that George Paton has done pretty well over his first 2 years. Granted, sample size is a little small. And this year is a pretty solid draft class on the inside. Not great, but it's pretty solid. And there's definitely options there that they got to dig deep to find. And if you don't want to do that, go out there and spend, because there's some quality free agents at those positions as well.
Yeah, there's, again, if you're okay at the top, that's the bigger question, really. And Shandy coming in, Shandy Breaks, he said, good morning, fellas. Was really hoping this was a year we stepped out of the dumpster fire, but it feels like we're just jumping off the high dive into over the 7 years. And the problem, I think, is you got your hopes up higher. It's like, okay, we suck again. That's one thing. You get used to that where you don't get so angry. But with the elevated hopes became an elevated spotlight. So you've been on prime time. You've been on national games, 4 out of your 6 games, 5 out of your 6 games, and it makes it tougher for you. I get it, Shandy. I absolutely understand. I'm going to get rid of this bot who's coming in late. I swear if you break 60 minutes, that might be Chad telling us it's time to get out of here. You break 60 minutes, the bots start finding you. So on that note, I want to get us out of here. I can run through some of these goodbyes here. Let me hit some of them. You can follow us on Broncos for Breakfast, BFB_pod, and the main account on Mile High Huddle on Twitter. You can find your merch. I'm going to get these back into the merch store. They're sweet, the Broncos for Breakfast mugs, but there's all kinds of stuff in there at huddleup.com. Hit us up on Apple Podcasts. Leave your football fans, your Mile High Huddle guys. It says Priest here. I'm the deacon, supposedly. But bring us a 5-star review for a chance to win some swag from that huddleuppod.com store. And as always, like, subscribe, and share when you come in. There were a ton of people watching. We were over 300 most of the day. Some new eyes, so make sure you're hitting that like, subscribe, and share. And before I get out of here, Naj is going to close us out today. Stepping in for Ethan, who's on assignment, our normal closer. Naj says the Justin Simmons press conference after the game was the most down I've ever seen him. I get it. I felt exactly the same way. The defense can't do more. What can the offense do, if anything, to improve? Personnel-wise, I think it got better. I think it got better this week. You had 4 new starters in there, basically. Billy Turner, Quinn Miners, Latavius Murray, Greg Dulcich. That's significant, Naj. It really is. And this was their first time out there. And I think all of those guys can help, Eric.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the personnel, and it wasn't a thing of, and despite the issues, there was plenty of promise and poise and, potential, the flashes, those were there. It's just a matter of putting it all together. But my issue is that we've been saying that for a few weeks. We've been seeing the flashes. The passing game only works on busted coverage and luck. And it's just a matter of getting that fixed. And how do you do that? Don't see how exactly without a drastic shakeup on the offensive line. And real quick before we get out of here, somebody pointed this out to me on Twitter. I guess Melvin Gordon has a bunch of tweets, since we were talking about him a little bit, of basically saying he should demand a trade. So that's noteworthy.
Yeah. Again, I don't demand a trade. I mean, he's still a talented running back. He's a good running back. Naj, I'm going to click off here and say goodbye. But know your value. If you go in and demand a trade, say, we'll give it 48 hours, but we're probably just going to release you. I think his deal was 1 year for the most part guaranteed, but it's not any money. Some of it was incentive based. It's like $2 million. We're halfway through the season, $1 million in dead cap hit. No big deal. I mean, if you want him gone, that's an easy one. Yeah. And on that note, it's real easy for us to get gone too. I just have to hit this end broadcast button up here, and then we'll see you tonight. Nick is out for the next 3 days. So tonight, I believe on Building the Broncos, it will be Carl and Luke tonight. And I'll be in the background for y'all tonight. So to channel my inner Nick, I just want to say thanks everybody for being here. As he would say, choose compassion and choose kindness. And he would definitely finish with a Go Broncos.